Lupa is coming back in the first half of the version 2.7 update, but has she proven herself to be a strong addition to Wuthering Waves' meta or not? That's what I'm going to be discussing in today's video by discussing Lupa's biggest pros and cons. The first thing to mention when it comes to Lupa is that she is the definitive fusion buffer. Out of every single character in the game, not a single other character can buff fusion characters just as hard as Lupa can. Because Lupa's sole purpose within the game is to buff fusion as much as she physically can. And this is very much reflected in her kit. She has a ton of different buffs, in her kit and outside of it. First of all, her Liberation gives up to 18% attack. Now, this is not that interesting. Literally any healer can do that with Rejuvenating Glow and Fallacy. But oh boy, the buffing just keeps going. Because when attacking a boss enemy, either weekly boss or regular boss, Lupa gives an additional 10% fusion damage bonus. With this doubling if your team entirely consists of fusion characters. For example, the Mono Fusion team consisting of her, Brant, and Chong-Li, getting the entire 20%. But wait, there's more. Her signature set, Flaming Clawprint, gives an additional 15% fusion damage bonus. But wait, there's more! Her Ultra skill gives 20% fusion damage amplification and 25% basic attack damage amplification, being a perfect buff for characters like Encore and Brant. And oh wait, there's more! She also allows you to ignore a percentage of the enemy's fusion resistance dependent on how many fusion resonators there are in the team, maxing out at 15%. But wait, there's more! Her signature weapon gives an additional 24% fusion damage bonus. All of this adds up to 59% fusion damage bonus, 18% attack, 20% fusion damage amplification, 25% basic attack damage amplification, and then there's also just straight up being able to ignore 15% of enemies' fusion resistance. That is a ton of buffs. You could just keep the attack percent, maybe only keep the resistance ignore, and then pair that with the Ultra skill, and you'd already have a good buffer on your hands. But Lupa decided to break all conventions and have so many buffs in her kit that whenever any fusion DPS comes out, you'll be sure to know that the core of Brant and Lupa is just ridiculously good for that character, including the upcoming Galbrenna. And that's a very good segue into my next point, being the fact that Lupa has a ton of different teams she's good in. Obviously, because she has so many buffs that are good towards all fusion characters, she is going to be good with every single fusion DPS in the game. The combination of Brant and Lupa creates the best in slot core for every currently existing fusion DPS. And while Galbrenna is not joining this gang because her best in slot team will be with Choyuan and Shorekeeper, she still has the Brant and Lupa combination as one of her best teams, being either her second best or her third best team, with the other team being a Mortefi and Lupa team. So guess what? You're still going to be using Lupa. As long as you're skipping Choyuan, Lupa is going to be a very good investment for your Galbrenna team. And then Chichia is obviously also going to be looking for a Lupa, and then there's going to be DPS Mortefi, who I don't know why you'd want to play that, but if you do, you're going to be using Lupa, and then obviously there is Chong-Li with the Mono Fusion composition with Brant and Lupa. Basically, if you're a fusion DPS, Lupa is going to be one of your best teammates, because Lupa just gives so many buffs, and she has synergy with one of the best characters in the game, being Brant. The Brant and Lupa combination is just ridiculously strong. These two characters are going to be able to carry literally any fusion character without any type of content. Trust me on that one. And even when you look at teams that don't feature Brant, she still has options. For example, you're going to be using her and Shorekeeper in the DPS Encore team. So yeah, if you got Encore off the standard banner and you ended up liking her playstyle, Lupa is going to be a very good investment to make sure your Encore lasts as long as possible. So yeah, I think that proves that if you're a fusion character, chances are Lupa is going to be an incredible option for your team. There is also some defensive utility that Lupa brings to the table, in the form of free dodges. Now, I'm not going to say these free dodges are perfect, because, well, they're not. These free dodges trigger automatically. When you get hit by an attack, Lupa will automatically allow you to dodge that attack for up to 3 times. Sometimes, however, this can interrupt your animations. For example, I see this happening quite a bit with my Chongli's Forte Heavy attack, but still, I would consider this an overall net positive within Lupa's kit. When you get hit, usually you don't care that much about the damage being dealt to you. What you really care about is the fact that you're being stunned, and that you're being knocked back, and that you're incapable of attacking again. Lupa fixes this by allowing you to automatically dodge that attack. It's honestly a very underrated utility in my opinion. I have gotten some pushback before for not caring about healing on sub-DPS characters, and that's because this is what I value. The ability to ignore interruption mechanics is, in my opinion, way more important than the ability to heal. Because, well, like I said before, when you get hit, you're not scared of the damage, you're scared of the knockback. And now to my next point, Lupa is one of the very few characters at this point that I feel functions completely fine without her signature weapon. Her signature weapon is obviously going to be a very good increase for the team. When we're talking about the Mono Fusion team with Chongli and Brand, we're looking at approximately 12% increase for the entire team. And this is a pretty good increase. But Lupa already has so much utility within her own kit that the 24% damage bonus that is being given by the weapon really doesn't feel necessary at all. And then for the personal damage increase for Lupa, obviously her best in slot is going to be her signature weapon. That should be expected. But Lupa actually has a pretty good alternative, because she actually does liberation damage. Most characters, when they're forced to use a standard banner weapon, are going to end up suffering, because, well, the standard banner weapon has pretty specific buffs. For example, Cosmic Ripple buffing basic attacks, so if you're not a basic attack damage dealer, you're really not going to be benefiting much from the Cosmic Ripples. But because Lustrous Razor gives liberation damage bonus, and Lupa does primarily liberation damage, this is actually going to be pretty useful for Lupa. So yeah, Lupa doesn't really need her Sig all that much. Next, there is another positive, being the fact that she actually solves one of Brand's issues. Brand is an incredibly powerful character, and considering you're playing him with almost every single fusion DPS alongside Lupa, it's gonna be very nice that Lupa is capable of solving one of Brand's biggest issues. That being that Brand's basic attacks kinda don't have that much AoE. Now obviously Lupa doesn't increase the AoE of the basic attacks themselves. That would be kind of ridiculous to have a buff specific to one character's kit. But what she does do is whenever Brand will use his liberation, and any character for that matter, Lupa will be capable of grouping the wave of enemies, allowing Brand's basic attacks to hit almost every single enemy that is currently on the field, as long as they're in the range of Lupa's grouping ability. And like I said before, this is not a synergy that's specific to Brand. This will work on any fusion character. This is going to work on Encore, for example, who, while she does have pretty decent AoE, will not be able to hit multiple enemies if they start to run away from each other. But I do feel that most of the synergy here is going to be with Brand. And then it's finally time for me to talk about the only real con that I can think of for Lupa, being the fact that almost all of her buffs are specifically for fusion, and really encourage the use of a mono fusion team comp. Her resistance ignore only works for fusion and gets stronger the more fusion characters there are on the team. The damage bonus effect from her liberation gets stronger the more fusion characters you have on the team. Almost all of her damage bonus effects are specifically for fusion, so you kinda get the point here. A lot of Lupa's buffing is locked specifically towards the fusion element, which means that if you're trying to use her with a non-fusion character, you're gonna end up getting pretty underwhelming performance, and rather being better off with literally anyone else. But that's just my thoughts on Lupa. Let me know what you think of her in the comments down below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Additionally, if you have any questions, you should join my Discord server, which is linked in the description. If you just want to see more of me as a person, you can also check the link in the description to visit my second channel. I kinda just talk about whatever I feel like on that channel, and I don't post super consistently, but if you want to check it out, feel free to. But that'll be all from me. Peace.